This is what the painting that we've been working on. This is where it is now. Um, it's been a few days, and I've collected a number of segments together to kind of go through how it is that we got to this point. There's an important segment on mixing of flesh tones, um, and so I'm going to kind of break it up a little bit as we go along here, but let's see how it goes. Should be a man waving his hands about here. That would be me. In a sort of magical manner, I suppose. But there he is. But as we look at this, here's our original um, concept, and here's the painting as it's progressing. But he's pointing out the figures, their position, the composition, how it's coming. Things aren't exactly as the original concept are, but we're going to be spending a little bit of time working on the boy and the girl, and in a later couple of segments, we'll start working on the figure on the left. Also, the dancer on the far right, with just the head. I felt that his head was too big. I was okay with it to begin with, but now it's apparent that what we need to do is to make it smaller and put it more into the plane of these, the space occupied not by just by him, but by these three elements here. So that strikes a line for us right through here, and that should help the composition quite a bit because it'll help to further the narrative, the sort of surreal narrative that I'd like to kind of play with. So right now I'm mixing up the flesh tones, and in a moment here we're going to take a look at those and see how they come out. I wanted to have a segment on just color in general, and we're going to do that. But in the meantime, we'll just look at these. And I'm changing the camera angle here. So what I've laid out on the palette is burnt sienna, viridian. This could also be phthalo green. This is cadmium red medium and cadmium yellow, and then of course titanium white. And I'm squirting on there now some ultramarine blue. So they're kind of arranged in sort of a flesh tone dance here, if you want to put it that way. It starts with these two colors, mixing a little bit of the green with the burnt sienna. So you already have a tone here, and we're going to take and make it just an even more brown than it is orange by mixing in this viridian into that. You'll see by adding some white, we really get there pretty quick in terms of what a flesh tone could be. And all I want is to get three basic values going, three basic skin tones. Now we're going to mix ultramarine blue with the burnt sienna, and we're going to use this for some of our darker tones, our darkest shadows in the painting. We're out of burnt sienna, so I got to get some more put on the table here. So you remember that our original mixture is burnt sienna and viridian, which has a little bit of blue in it. Now we're going with burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. So we're in a kind of a blue range, which is just about where I want to be. Mix this dark up here. And then I'm going to add, so I got these two, the light and the dark, and now I need a middle, right? So we're just going to take some of it from the light, mix it with the dark, and get a middle, and then make some adjustment to it. If we don't do it now, we can always do it later, but that gives us 1, 2, 3 tones to work with. Not evenly spaced necessarily, but that's okay. So then we come back to the painting. And I'm sorry if it's a little bit dark. See how much I love my maul stick. It just really helps me when I need to rest my hand, and I do rest it quite a bit. Now I'm going to take a kind of a soft brushy brush, and the idea here is I'm going to get the shape of his head and sort of sort out the tilt of it. You can see the shadow under his chin. I'm going to put that in now. Just blocking it in, and with a little bit of thinner, being aware that, yeah, there you go. See, now that you see the chin doesn't just come straight down at an angle, so we just wipe it away. This ear is going to be there at the and the nose and a little bit of the mouth. And bada boom, bada bing. We're about got where he sits, and then we can kind of put a little mark in there. What that mark is wrong probably, but we'll change it. Now, there's some problems with the little girl in terms of things get kind of messy here, but don't worry about that. Again, we can wipe some of that out, and looks like some of that is related to, uncertainty about that is kind of shared by the figure on the left. We're going to refine that a little bit. We're just taking the same dark skin tone that we picked, and we're putting it over there into that figure and other places where we need to kind of sort out what's going on with the poses. So there's the thing. We're kind of figuring out where the eye is, the nose, the chin, mouth, and the chin. And then things get kind of messy. You see there that I just jumped away from that right to this big hot mess. But that's not a problem. We'll just figure it out. Take some of that middle skin tone and block in the mask of the face. We're not worried too much about the planes of the face just yet. We want to get the mask of the face. So we got a middle tone, a dark tone. Goes up to the ear, and then we're gonna come back and get the neck. And there we go. Good. Yeah. The paint ends up pretty dark right now. I tend to rely on sometimes letting that dry a little bit, or picking it up with the rag, or seeing how well it'll tolerate the lighter tone that I come back with. So just blocking in the hair, and it's pretty simple. Now we jump to kind of save yourself some. I'm trying to save you some pain, I think. And again, waving my hands around in a magical way there. The boy is starting to come together, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done now. We need to be thinking about how the light strikes the planes of the face and start to create more volume, more mass instead of just shapes. Now, as you look at her face, you can see how much more sense of depth and form there is here as compared to this face, or this giant head over here, which we're going to make smaller. So now I come back, then we're going to come back in with those light tones, see how well they take. Some time has passed already, so there's been some drying of the paint occurring. I've also added the little bit of suggestion of the highlights in the hair here. More on that will have to be done later. Getting a small brush just to dig into that where the eye is and the shadows around the eye. Jumping around here a little bit with the video just to save some time. What I'm working on is called the shadow core, and which is just set back from the terminator of the shadow, or where it kind of falls off into the lighter areas. There's a little more color in that core, and there's a little more reflected light in that shadow too, you'll notice, but I don't think we'll get to that just yet. Right now we're just mostly concerned about kind of getting their position right and feeling comfortable with the scale of the figure. Well, there are a lot of ways to paint. This is just the way I paint, so you find your own. I kind of tell you what I'm doing with mine so that you have an idea of just, what's on my mind, what's going through my head. The ear is particular important in terms of the color of highlights. There's a little more red in the ear, a little more red in the shadows. Also, notice I'm beginning to darken the hair a bit. That makes that highlight a little more potent. But also we're looking for the shape of that hair, the shape of his head. As those things as we take care of those things, those basic things, then we can go back and start to work a little bit more on details. But I try to save the details for when it's appropriate. The eyes are important. Usually there's a lot of detail there, but there's still a lot of detail yet to come that we aren't going to deal with just yet, because it's too early. Too many other things that we have to figure out. And we take some time to look at it. It's always a good idea to look at what you're doing. And you can see what I'm thinking. I'm going to be working on that little girl next. Try to get her place right. So I'm just going through my mind about where her nose is relative to the shoulder of the boy, and how large the mask of her face is. Some proportion issues there. Again, taking that middle tone of the skin and using that to kind of plot my way through this issue of scale and so on. I see there with that quick little jump, I've decided to enlarge her face just a little bit relative, so to make it compatible with his. Change also adjust the angle of it, so we can see her looking more in the direction that she appears to be looking in the original composition, towards the dancer on the far right there. Okay, there we go. We're just kind of sketching. One adjustment leads to another. You want to try to find the anchor that allows all the other adjustments to work. In this case, it's the right proportion for the relationship of the eyes to the nose to the mouth to the forehead to the crown of the head, chin, mouth. Even though I could draw a portrait without having a subject, um, when you have a subject, there's all sorts of interesting information that you get to create the likeness that makes it a pleasurable thing to do. And we skipped ahead a bit here, and you can see that I've gone to try to work on those facial planes to add in some lights. And again, nothing is permanent. It can all be changed. Whatever I need to. Look, I made a mistake on her forehead there. That's something we're going to have to wipe out a bit. There we go. Sorry for those little jumps. You don't miss a whole lot. We're just skipping through some repetitive stuff. But the basic idea is that we're adding these highlights. Not the highlights, the lighter skin tones. The highlights we're going to save for much later. This area around her chin is going to need to be touched up a little bit. Basically, it helps to show her youth, and it actually is more of a likeness that way, right? Because that's the way she is. And there we go, the nose, mouth, and then we could start to think about that chin, which is going to have light on it. When you think about the lips, you think about the upper lip having a bit of having shadow on it, while the lower lip is going to receive a portion of the cast shadow and then have some highlights in it later. Right now, all we need is to define that upper lip and the lower lip, and then we can kind of play with some of the features that go with making a mouth look right. But I need to put that mouth in there so I can figure out how to do her chin. Could do the chin, but mouth is one of those critical points, measurement of the face. I really like her hair. I think as time goes on, we're gonna do we'll have some fun with that. There we go. Now it's gone. Okay, I got rid of that little mark on the chin, which is This is probably a day later now where that paint has had a little bit of a chance to dry, and we can come in and again build up the light area on that strikes the plane of the chin right here. And that here I think is going to be a mistake, uh, but we leave it for now. She's starting to sit in her space, which is good. There's just a bit more to be done here in terms of her neck. There we go. And some of the hair that's fallen down on the left side of her body, our right side, there, that helps to define the neck a bit. I have to stress that when something starts to look good, there is a time to walk away from it, but usually we don't go far enough. We don't push the contrast enough. We don't push the color enough. We don't go as far as we should. What we're looking for actually is this uh, ineffable aesthetic quality, something that uh, makes us feel something when we look at an image. That's the nature of art, is something that goes beyond just what we can duplicate or copy or even just arrange. It's not just a design; it's something more. Yeah, that hair looks nice. It's going to bring out the neck, chin. In a week or two, I plan to be doing some stained glass, so I invite you to come back and join me for that. Also, I have to finish up a sculpture. Okay, another day has passed. I think we're looking at there's some fiddling around needs to be done with her little girl's cheek yet, but we'll see what happens with that. And now just some sort of thinking, and then mixing up some more skin tone. The reason that I had the cadmium red medium and the cadmium yellow medium in there was to modify that basic skin tone. It could have been other colors to go in there, cadmium scarlet or alizarin crimson or some other forms of yellow, maybe yellow ochre. Lots of possibilities. No one mixture necessarily is better than another when you think about it, that they're all dependent upon everything that's going on in the painting, all the color relationships. There we go. Working on that cheek and the transition to the nose, so where the base of the nose and the cheek intersect. Yeah. Computer monitor is really good for me because I sometimes have a little trouble seeing. I got astigmatism, so uh, images will not just be fuzzy, they'll have sort of a double line, a double edge. I can only imagine what it would have been like 300 years ago when you'd have them all sitting there, and it would be days, weeks that you would need them. And then to think about the inconsistent lighting from day to day. We look at how that leg needs to be adjusted. You can see I'm just sketching again. And we jump ahead now. You can see I filled in quite a bit of the form of her flesh with that sort of flesh tone that we mixed up, only this time with some thinner. Just trying to sort out where everything fits together. Right now her body's a bit wide in the upper torso there, so it's going to have to be narrowed. Some of that's just from misstating the shoulders and the breasts, and how the arms are going to, the hands and the arms are going to kind of work. Remember, we're going to work from the known to the unknown, and we're going to try to find our way to the known. The shape of the head, the hair, the general curve from the forehead for me is instructive, and then I can kind of go back in and cut into it. There we go with the shoulder, fixing that. This is just a light wash. I just practically pick up almost anything that's on the palette. I figure I can't go too wrong because I end up using that as part of a lot of the mixtures that I make anyway on any given painting. If it's on the palette, in one way or another, it's going to end up in the painting. So even as a underpainting with this light wash or in a mixture later. That's better, still not right, but we're going to get there. But a handsome, bald, and tanned head. I'm so glad I cut it off, all the hair. All right, there we go. I used to have lots of hair, went all over the place. It was hard to control. I see we kind of go back in there, and again, we're looking for information and things, guideposts to help us kind of get the right shapes. And then we're looking at the forms. See, we'll pick it out. Keep looking at the model. So easy to lose that reference, and then nothing comes out right. How do we get that hair filled in the shape there? In the end, this painting isn't about the composition as much as the composition and the quality of the painting is intended to help carry the theme of the painting, that aesthetic quality that we were talking about. So I don't want to just choose any color for this or that. We're trying to make things work together to make them beautiful and to help them to fulfill their role in this story that we're telling in this picture. And I do like that sort of narrative quality in artwork. Come a point here where we'll get her face in place. There we go. Kind of push it back. Look at that. The legs. Right now things are a bit thick. I need to kind of whittle them down. I'm pushing that easel back with my bare feet right now. I like to paint with my bare feet, not with my bare feet, but with my bare feet. I just want to be comfortable. And then we move it back again. Okay. I do like this painting. I think it's going to be a very beautiful picture, but it's going to take us some work to get there. Well, the relationship between these figures, in terms of how much room they afford each other on the canvas, is not all that important in this case. And I made allowance for that when I started painting. I realized, for example, there's more room here where her head and her arm meet. And right now, we would get some of that. We'll get some of that back. But the fact that they're a little closer together is not a problem. They're consistent with each other in the way that they should be. Wow, I'm going to draw that shoulder out there so far. It is too far. Knees are really interesting anatomical construct here when we look at the way the muscles come together as to how the knee is built. Uh, when it's under tension, when it's not, it's the whole body's kind of like that too. Shift your weight to one leg, muscles change. Body is very changeable. Which is one reason why it's good to have a life model. There we go. Now we start to kind of see where that arm is going to go. We still could come into this and thin this up even a bit more on her torso, but we'll save that. I think we're going to save that for a little bit later. I critique myself pretty hard. It's good to be a little bit hard on yourself, just to make sure you get things where they need to be. And that wave of the hand seems to be working, doing okay so far. And then because I can't help myself, I'm going to go back and do something else. And we'll look at it, give it a chance to look at it. Big giant head on the right, really bugging me. Back down here, get back on track. There we go. Oh, now you see, this is really aggressive. What I've done is I've said, okay, I like your face the way but it was too big. So now we're going to come back and we're going to just rebuild you. And sometimes you have to do that. But if you're so emotionally invested in what you're doing and you're really grateful for how something looks, this can be a terrifying prospect. But if you don't do it, everything else gets screwed up because it ends up driving more of the of the work that you're doing than it really should. It has too much importance, let's say. The head then is, in this case, is a subordinate, supportive element, not a dominant one. So we're going to go ahead and kind of adjust that and just make it what it needs to be. That's right. See, that magic hand tells us it's just about right. They're where they need to be, right size. Things are working good. Let me get back to the details, shapes of the faces, sculpting the forms, trying to make sure they come out round. Generally, you need three basic tones to get a form starting to feel uh, solid, a dark, a middle, and a light. But that's just a beginning. We go. I have to go much further in terms of how we think about light. I skipped ahead a little bit, and you kind of see that I saved you some trouble of looking at the boredom of watching me fix his head. I'll tell you though that his neck isn't right, and I have to kind of play with that. But we're just about there, and I think if I took a minute, we could probably yeah, there we go. Fiddle with her chin a little bit, do a little more to make her look like she is there. She's got a big black headband, I think, that really helps to define the shape of her hair and head, and that'll be a good compositional element. I was thinking later that I would bring a fern in to use as a foil on this part of the painting in order to kind of get a bit of movement going to follow the curtain, play on the curtains or curves, opposing curves, and so on. But we'll see. Yeah, it's just enough to kind of see what she's up to, where she's looking. We'll get in there and kind of start to build out those facial planes and describe the shape of her head. And in a minute here, I think, get that black headband in there. I don't usually talk to myself when I'm painting. I'm usually very quiet. But looking at myself paint is a whole different thing. I can talk to myself in the third person. I can talk about myself in the third person. That's kind of cool, actually. There we go with that, man. Yeah, good. So long ways to go. We're probably about 15 to 20% finished with this painting. A lot of elements that we haven't yet seen, or not yet imagined. I can't imagine yet what they are either. Part of me would like to have an animal in this picture. I don't know. Don't know what it would mean. Don't know what it would say about me. Not sure how I feel about that. Maybe a little Pomeranian. That could be fun. And there you go. Now we look at it and we think, we enjoy and consider, ponder. And that's where we are. So until next time, give yourself something to think about. Let me know if you have any questions.